Now let's record on this computer. So recording is also started. So our main focus for today is information security. In information security, we want to talk about today about introduction to information security. We want to talk about unintentional threats to information security. We want to talk about the deliberate threats to information systems and what organizations are doing to protect the information resources and information security controls. Those are the chapter outline. To accomplish these chapter outlines, these are the learning objectives. Identifying the 5 factors that contribute to the increasing vulnerability of information resources, compare and contrast human mistakes and social engineering, discuss 10 types of deliberate attacks, define the 3 risk mitigation strategies, identify the 3 major types of controls, and the chapter outline, followed by the opening case, the Equifax breaches. What I would like you all to do as our starting point for today is I want you to read the Equifax breaches, the whole case. I don't know, we're going to take a little bit of a time, but just spend those 5-10 minutes, read this opening case. Okay, let me ask you a question about this particular case that you just got done finished reading. How would you respond to question number 1? Okay. So Ismail saying better security, Andre is saying they should have patched their system. So were they informed about the problem? And who informed them about the problem? Okay, did they give them any instructions to repair it? Yeah, okay, so they had pretty much everything given to them, so but still they chose not to go that route. How would you answer number 5? Yep, all of you who have posted this far, exactly, there is no solution. Now moving on to the introduction to information security over here. which talks about these 5 topics. Number 1, security, which is defined as the degree of protection against criminal activity, danger, damage, and or loss. That's security. Information security, on the other hand, all of the processes and policies designed to protect an organization's information and information systems from unauthorized access, use, disclosure, disruption, modification, or destruction. All of these are part of information security. When it comes to a threat, any danger to which a system may be exposed is a threat, and exposure is the harm, loss, or damage that can result if a threat compromises an information resource. And a vulnerability of an information resource is the possibility that the system will be harmed by a threat. So these are some definitions which are also at the bottom of slide number 5 in the notes section, and they're also talked about in the introduction. Just how bad is the cybercrime today? There are some examples listed on page number 95. Go ahead and read these 4 bullet points. And the definitions I discussed with you from slide number 5 are actually from page number 96 of your book under Introduction to Information Security. You will find all of these items. Today's 5 factors contributing to vulnerability include these 5 items that are exactly from page 96. Today's interconnected, interdependent, wirelessly networked business environments. So much connection is going on. You cannot live without connecting today. Another is smaller, faster, cheaper computers and storage devices are making things more readily accessible. Decreasing skills necessary to be a computer hacker. There are so many software out there that without any coding, a person can be a hacker. International organized crime taking over cybercrime, and then lack of management support sometimes can also be a contributor to information security problems. Unintentional threats to information systems. One of the common one is called a human error, and the other one is called social engineering. Human errors could be internal or could be external. However, human errors are any mistakes made by a human. Now, in this diagram, which is figure 4.1 in your book, it shows security threats, employees, other insiders, system software, Hardware threats categorized as all internal threats. And outside threats could include from internet malware, denial of service attacks, unauthorized access, natural disasters, man-made disasters. All of these are considered to be security threats. Take a minute and read the details of this diagram, which is figure 4.1 on page 97. And then read table 4.1 on page 98. Once you are done reading the human mistakes, can you write in the comment section, what are your top 3 choices? I mean, like, what do you think out of all of these are the top 3 human errors? Great answers, everybody, whoever is giving the answers and those who are still in the process of giving answers. Absolutely. These are all valid answers. It's just like, you know, it's your criteria list, pretty much.
My wife is IT, so the amount of stuff I hear on a daily basis from her, people opening emails that looks like an email from somebody important, and then it just causes the whole system to crash because that's what it's meant for.
Ah, I see. I see. You know, at Gateway, at some point in time, the security team at Gateway would take a poll of how many people are email ready. So they would actually purposely send these kind of emails out and collect a poll, and then we'll notify that how many people are still falling victim to these so-called emails coming from the workplace, but they're not.
They just did that the other day because they got some new system and they hired an outsourced company, and then they did like a test, and the actual owner of the company that she works for opened one of the bad emails.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it went all the way up to the top. Like you said, the more access you have to stuff, the more dangerous it is, because you could pretty much put your company at complete risk by leaking bad information. I mean, valuable information is what I meant to say.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Like KUSD's internet was down for like 4 days, 3 days, whatever. Yeah, I mean, I think something happened. They didn't put a lot of disclosures out there, but anyway, moving on to social engineering, which is an attack in which the perpetrator uses social skills to trick or manipulate legit employees into providing confidential company information, such as passwords. At one point in time, people will be calling their workplaces, pretending to be from IT and trying to gain information. These are the hackers already in the system, trying to gain access to the resource for which it is asking for the password. So they will use social engineering skills to grab the password from one of the employees and will use that to get into the system. One of the famous case was Kevin Mitnick's case, world famous hacker and former FBI's most wanted, who now is a public speaking figure. But back in 1980s, his marriage broke because of his hacking addiction. He would spend hours and hours trying to hack. And yeah, I mean, like now he is a spokesperson. So that's basically coming out of the jail that he started as his business, to now become a white hat hacker. Now, there are deliberate threats to information system. One of them is espionage or trespassing. Another one is information extortion, sabotage or vandalism of information, such as deliberate acts that involve defacing an organization's website, potentially damaging the organization's image and causing its customers to lose faith, or the theft of equipment or information, like one of the cases that you read earlier, or identity theft, or compromises to intellectual property. All of these are different ways of deliberate threats to information systems. The list goes on to software attacks, to alien software, which are installed on your computer through several different methods, or supervisory control and data acquisition attacks, CADA attacks, which refer to a large-scale distributed measurement and control systems. For example, those that may be used to monitor your, some of the water systems or electrical systems have these behind the scene. These are monitoring systems, and somebody would attack those monitoring systems. Similarly, cyber terrorism and cyber warfare, which are, attackers are used. I mean, like governments also do it to do cyber terrorism on the other governments whom they're not on good terms with. So those are some of the measures that you would see around. Now, what I would like you guys to do is move on to page number 101 and read about this hacking hotel key card locks. This is another case that I want you to read about. That's pages 101 and 102. So this is our next topic, software attacks, table 4.2, page 103, 104. So read these attacks. And also write in the chat which one of these you didn't know about before or you found more interesting than others. The backdoor could mean any means through which a person could hack into the network. Now, let me give you one example over here. Many years ago, Abbott Labs, when it used to be Abway and Abbott used to be one company, they hired somebody to check to see how secure their network is. And one of the Abbott employees told me about this, and he said, you know, the company tried everything, and they were extremely unsuccessful trying to hack into the Abbott network. However, they tried something very simple that gave them access into the Abbott's network, and that was as simple as sitting on the highway ramp and try to get to the wireless headsets of the security guards, and they were open. And at the same time, they were acceptable nodes to the network. So they hacked into those wireless headsets or wireless sets, and through that, they were able to hack into the network. So, you know, then they gave them, all the security guards were then given encrypted wireless sets. Simple things, easy to ignore. And here is another example right underneath this table. A student at the US university was sentenced to 1 year in prison for using key logging software to steal 750 fellow students' passwords and vote himself and 4 of his fraternity brothers into the student government's president and 4 vice president positions. Why did he do that? His intention was that the 5 positions would have brought the students a combined $36,000 in stipends. That was the catch. That's why he did it. The student was caught when university security personnel noticed strange activities on the campus network. Authorities identified the computer used in the activity from its internet protocol address. On this computer, which belonged to the student in question, authorities found a PowerPoint presentation detailing the scheme. Authorities also found research on his computer with queries such as how to rig an election and jail time for keylogger. Once the university caught on to the scheme, the student reportedly turned back to hacking to try to get himself out of trouble. He created new Facebook accounts in the names of actual classmates, going as far as conducting fake conversations between the accounts to try to deflect the blame. Those actions contributed to the 1-year prison sentence, which the judge imposed even after the student pleaded guilty and requested probation. Interesting case, right? Very, very interesting case. Okay, for our next activity, I would like to put you guys in a breakout room for 12 minutes. And what you got to do is this: read the whaling attacks case and discuss the answers for both questions within your group. And then we will come back and we'll discuss them. So I'm opening the rooms now. What you got to do, page number 104, 105, read whaling attacks and discuss within your groups the 2 questions. nice discussion in the discussion room or in the breakout room. So let's see, what do you guys have to say about the first question? What is the difference between the three terms?
I mean, it's pretty much what they're going for. I mean, one of them really attacks your go after your personal information for one specific person. You know, like in my opinion. I mean,
So phishing basically is it uses an email that looks like an official email and tries to steal your information through that approach.
right.
And your spear phishing is where you try to get connected with a lot of people that know this one individual and try to get as much information about that one individual from so many people, and then go with that information so that it looks very legit.
Legit, correct.
And then the whaling is trying to an attempt to steal sensitive information from a company. It could be anybody's personal data, financial data, just target high value individuals. Basically, that's the point. Okay, yeah, okay. Did your group get a chance to talk about question number 2?
I mean, personally, I think you should, be more aware and make sure you're open, especially in terms of emails, because even personally, you still get these random emails and like on your phones or whatever. So, what you could do to defend that is be more aware, especially now that we're taking this class too. You'll probably open a lot of more windows that you could, see and recognize more stuff. So I think awareness is one of the key things for me.
Okay.
In terms of that part.
Okay. Okay. How about the other groups?
Yeah, I think that the precautions that you take against phishing attacks should be pretty similar to whaling attacks. Just be cautious of emails that contain, like, if you have to wire money over, like, be cautious of that so you don't give money to the wrong person. But also links that are sent in emails. Just if you ever have any concern, then maybe talk to the person that sent it and be like, is this link from you? And then if they say no, then don't open it or something like that.
Okay. Okay. So Desmond talked about awareness, and then after awareness, you need to have the next step should be training. Train the people. So training, staff training, in other words, have a better policy in place, and everybody should adhere to the policy. In some companies, there are very strict rules of internet usage, social media presence, firewalls, and up-to-date network security techniques. I remember when I was doing corporate training for Bank of America in downtown Chicago, which used to be called Sears Tower, now Willys Tower, and their security was quite tight in terms of I couldn't even use a web browser without somebody signing me in to a web browser. So things of that nature. But anyway, moving on to the next topic here is alien software. Many personal computers have alien software, or calls pestware, running on them that the owners are unaware of. And alien software is clandestine software that is installed in your computer through duplicious methods. It typically is not as malicious as viruses, worms, or Trojan, but it does use up valuable system resources. It can also enable other parties to track your web surfing habits and other personal behaviors. And of course, then they sell them, right? The vast majority of pestware is adware, software that causes pop-up advertisement to appear on your screen. Spyware is software that collects personal information about users without their consent. Then we have keystroke logger. We looked at the case of that in case of university thing. Then we have spamware, which is a pestware that uses your computer as a launch pad for spammers. Spam is unsolicited email, usually advertising for products and services. Then cookies are small amounts of information that websites store on your computer temporarily or more or less permanently. In many cases, cookies are useful and they don't really cause much harm. So these are some of the alien software. Then supervisory control and data acquisition attacks. It's a large-scale distribution, measurement, and control systems. That's what basically they are, supervisory control and data acquisition. They're used to monitor or to control chemical, physical, and transport processes, such as those used in oil refineries, water and sewage systems, electrical generators, and nuclear power plants. So think about somebody attacking those could be extremely dangerous, extremely dangerous. Similarly, cyber terrorism and cyber warfare refers to malicious acts in which attackers use a target's computer systems, particularly through the internet, to cause physical, real-world harm or severe disruption. These actions range from gathering data to attacking critical infrastructures, such as SCADA systems. So depending on at what level you're doing, it's again, it's an extremely, extremely risky stuff. What organizations are doing to protect information resources? So here is another table for you to read: difficulties in protecting information resources. Once you're done reviewing the table, I would like you to scroll down a little bit on page 111 and read about these 4 cases where it was possible to catch attackers, but with great efforts, time, and expense. So read these 4 different examples.
Got a question for you.
Yep.
Can you do hacking on a smartphone?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, they can be hacked to an extent where you wouldn't even know that somebody is eavesdropping on your conversation.
No, I mean, can you like hack from a smartphone?
You can hack from a smartphone, you're saying. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. See, what is hacking? Hacking is a piece of code that you run from a computer, and that pretty much does what it is supposed to do. So some phone manufacturers will block you from having to do certain things at a phone level, but then these hackers will jailbreak those phones because their intended usage is something else. They don't want it to go back to the manufacturer and say, oh, can you please upgrade my operating system? No, their whole intention is totally different. So yeah. Here's a very interesting article that I'm sharing with you guys in the chat. It talks about how to turn an Android phone into a hacking device. You know, it's just something to keep on. I mean, like you could read it after class. I just shared it with you since you asked about it. And this is like 3 years ago. This article is not a new one.
I don't know. I'm a little skeptical about that link.
I was about exactly to say the same thing.
This is from wonderhowto.com. Anyway, so now let's move on to our next topic, which is about risk analysis, and risk mitigation. Risk is basically the probability that a threat will impact an information resource, and risk management identifies, controls, and minimizes the impact of threats. In other words, risk management seeks to reduce risk to acceptable levels, and risk analysis ensure that information system security programs are cost effective. And risk mitigation is the organization takes concrete actions against risks, which has two functions. Number one, implementing controls to prevent identified threats from occurring. And number two, developing a means of recovery if the threat becomes a reality. So again, this is a war that you can't really win. It's just like you can only secure things to a certain extent. So there is something called risk acceptance, which is accept the potential risk, continue operating with no controls, and absorb any damages that occur. Risk limitation is limit the risk by implementing controls that minimize the impact of the threat. And risk transference is transfer the risk by using other means to compensate for the loss, such as by purchasing insurance. So these are some of the things that corporations can do. As far as information security controls are concerned, that is coming next. Slide number 24. Page number 113. To protect their information assets, organizations implement control or defense mechanisms. These controls are designed to protect all of the components of an information system, including the data, the software, the hardware, and networks. Because there are so many diverse threats, organizations use layers of controls or defense in depth. So here you can see an example of where defense mechanisms are located. So there are some physical controls Then you can have access controls, right? And then remote employee or attacker can use these things to get through the internet. And then when you're trying to attack the corporate LAN, you have a firewall to eavesdrop at packet level and stop them. Sometimes companies have DMZs, which is demilitarized zones with multiple firewalls in them. So again, you know, companies can use physical controls such as wall, doors, fencing, gates, locks, badges, guards, alarm systems, and can have access controls such as who can access what, to what extent. Like there are some corporations that even would not even allow you to access the work resources outside of work hours. I mean, a friend of mine used to work for a corporation, and they wouldn't allow him to even enter the facility on weekdays because officially he was on vacation that week. So they disabled his access. I mean, it was like, wow.
That's a lot.
Those
Yeah.
are some
Wow.
pretty far security measures.
Yep. Nature of the organization. If somebody is working for some high-profile banks like U.S. Reserves or something like that, I mean, like, then their security measures are extremely high too. Federal Reserve Bank and stuff like that. So biometrics are used, multiple authentication mechanisms are used. Even at, you know, you probably would have noticed in V2 Cloud, there are two authentications that you use. One is your username and password, and another one is through an app where you're either sending a code or you or there's an app like One Login that you have to enter into your phone and authenticate yourself. It gives even the location from where the access is taking place. So it even records the IP address. It's just, you know, these are just extra measures. Gateway has had this policy in place that if you are bringing in your own laptop, like for example, faculty members, if you are to bring in your own machine, you cannot access our network. You can use that guest Wi-Fi kind of stuff, but you can't access the network resources. And then those computers are very locked down. So some faculty members chose to have unlocked down computers because the nature of our field, there are so many upgrades that happen all the time, right? So you have to update these softwares all the time. So they had their computers unlocked, and then they had to completely wipe out everything on them, and they had a fresh install. They have an open machine, but they can't use that machine to access gateway resources. I purposely didn't have mine completely wiped out because I still need to access resources every now and then. So that's why I'm okay with having a lockdown computer because a lot of the stuff that I teach is very much accessible through V2 Cloud. And I could update things through our tech person on the V2 Cloud. And also when I'm teaching from home, I use my personal desktop. And a lot of the software that I use in the software development program that I teach, the areas that I teach in, are either licensed through Gateway or they are open source. So it doesn't really affect me much if you ask me. So anyway, for some people it affects more than others. Anyway, moving on to access controls, which talks about authentication mechanisms and authorization mechanisms and things of that nature. Moving on to firewalls. A firewall is a system that prevents a specific type of information from moving between untrusted networks, such as the internet and the private networks, such as your company's network. And as I was talking about the DMZ or demilitarized zone, which is located between two firewalls, messages from the internet must first pass through the external firewall, and then they're checked by the internal firewall, and both firewalls must authenticate them to be able to access the company resources. So similarly, you have anti-malware systems, also called antivirus or AV softwares, which are software packages that attempt to identify and eliminate viruses and worms and other malicious software. But again, these companies are always one step behind for most part, because until and unless the virus comes in, you can't really be making an antivirus. But these companies invest a lot of money in creating softwares that are continuously monitoring the system for any activity that is out of norm. So for which we have some leading companies like Symantec, which is basically Norton, or McAfee, which is McAfee virus, or Trend Micro. Even some people don't invest in them because Windows operating system also comes with an antivirus software, right? So some people just use that one. And they rely on that one versus having to purchase one. And then there's some open source ones too that people install. The biggest problem with an open source is like it's open source. So if you have access to it, so does hacker. Anyway, then we have whitelisting and blacklisting. Whitelisting are websites that are the only websites that you're allowed to use. So some workplaces actually give you a whitelist websites. You cannot access any other website but these. And the blacklisting is basically you can access the entire internet but these websites. Sometimes they block the sites even to words, that if you type certain words or if the site has certain words in the description, then those sites will be blocked. Again, from banking world, one of my friends used to work for LaSalle Bank. I don't know if anyone of you know about that bank. It is not there anymore. LaSalle Bank. It was part of ABN AMRO Group. That was a European company. They decided to wind up their business from US and they went back. But before they went back, they sold their assets to between Citi Group and Bank of America. So he used to work for LaSalle Bank or ABN AMRO. I don't remember now, one of the two. During lunchtime, his free time, he used to go to the sports websites and look at the sports stats, right? And that's lunchtime, not during our work hours. And then the administrator somehow got a hold that somebody's surfing sports websites. Even though it's lunchtime, they blocked all access to sports sites. Like, wow, right? I'm like, wow, that's pretty bad, pretty harsh. It's not. So yeah, some corporations can go to that extent. Anyway, so going down to encryption, of course, there are methodologies to encrypt your data, which is to hide it. And then basically the data is floating, but not in a clear form. So it's hidden through the process of encryption, and then it could be decrypted on the other end. How do we achieve encryption? Of course, it's a very complex methodology. We come up with algorithms that will take in the clear text and will produce text which is not clear. It's a bunch of jumbled up stuff. If anybody even get a hold of it, won't be able to access the information. That is mostly symmetric approach, that the other party who has the key is the only one who can uncipher it or decipher it and be able to read it. That's one approach. The other approach is called asymmetric approach. The asymmetric approach has two keys, private and public. The private keys can be used to cipher the message or encrypt the message, and the public key can be used to or decrypt it, basically, or the vice versa. If you have encrypted using public, then only private can decrypt it. So why did they do that? Well, basically, if you are the sender of the message, you are the only one who can have the private key. Nobody else can have it. So when you encrypt the message using the private key and anybody opens the message using the public key, that they can be sure of the fact that only you can be the sender because only you have the private key. And when somebody wants to send you information, they use your public key to encrypt the information because they know that only you have the private key and only you can open that message. So that combination, public key, private key, is used for that purpose. And then in between, you can have hashing and some of the other algorithms of different kinds that can be used. VPN, virtual private network, is a private network that uses a public domain to connect users. VPN essentially integrates the global connectivity of the internet with the security of a private network. So you basically are tunneling into your workplace using the internet. That's pretty much what you're doing, tunneling into your workplace. So when you tunnel into your workplace, again, that is something that only those people can do that have been authorized to do that. Let me give you one example. I had a perfectly working computer that would connect to all the gateway resources. I'm talking about back in 2019. So I finished the semester, and next morning I drove to Canada. Okay, the semester, my classes were done, but we have 48 hours of window to submit the grades. So next day I drove to Canada and I did some grading that night that I reached my destination. Next day morning, we used to have an application called Web Advisor. I'm trying to access Web Advisor and it keeps blocking me. And I'm like, what's going on? And I'm trying to access some of the other resources, it keeps blocking me. One way or the other, I got hold of the director of security at Gateway. I'm like, oh, what's going on, man? I was accessing everything perfectly fine yesterday, and all of a sudden, everything is getting blocked. And he's like, where are you? I said, I'm in Canada. I am done with my classes. The only thing I need to do is turn in the grades. It's not letting me turn in the grades. He said, oh, because of some attacks from Canada, we have blocked Canada. I'm like, really? I said, yeah. We will open it only for you to enter the grades, only for a limited time. So he gave me like 24, 36 hours window that I could just turn in my grades, and I told him that I'm done. My vacation starts now. I'm not logging back in. And yeah, it was pretty interesting. I mean, but yeah. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. Like, I expect them to do something from like inside the US, but from another country, like.
Yeah, because every country has a pool of IP addresses, so they can just block all pools but these access point. Yeah. Anyway, moving on to the transport layer security, TLS, formerly called SSL. SSL, or secure socket layer, is now called TLS, transport layer security. It's an encryption standard used for secure transactions such as credit card purchases and online banking. TLS is indicated by a URL, and you can easily identify any URL on the internet that starts with HTTPS. The S is for the TLS layer. Okay, and that is the security layer that provides for all your digital certificates and all of that stuff. Your encryption, decryption algorithms, all of that stuff resides at the TLS layer. Okay, moving on to types of auditors and audits. There are two types of auditors and audits, internal and external. Information security auditing is usually a part of accounting internal auditing and is frequently performed by corporate internal auditors. An external auditor reviews the finding of the internal audit as well as the inputs, processing, and outputs of the information system. The external audit of information system is frequently a part of the overall external auditing performed by the certified public accounting firm called CPA. Information system auditing considers all of the potential hazards and controls in information system. It focuses on issues such as operations, data integrity, software applications, security and privacy, budgets and expenditures, cost control, and productivity. Guidelines can be found at this website, isaca.org, which is for Information Systems Audit and Control Association. How is auditing executed? Information system auditing procedures fall into three categories: auditing around the computer, auditing through the computer, and auditing with the computer. Auditing around the computer refers to verifying processes by checking for known outputs using specific inputs. This approach is most effective for systems with limited outputs. In auditing through the computers, auditors check input, outputs, and processing. They review program logic, and they test the data contained within the system. Auditing with the computer means using a combination of client data, auditor software, and client and auditor hardware. This approach enables the auditor to perform tasks such as simulating payroll program logic using live data. Okay, so with that, go ahead and read through the chapter summary. Then I will be putting you guys again in breakout rooms for 10 minutes for one more case to look at. In the meanwhile, you guys go over the chapter summary. Let me set up the breakout rooms. Okay, I have put in the chat which case I want you to discuss in your groups and which pages it is in the book, and only discuss question number 1. And I'm about to open your groups so that you can join those. And you can speak. Some of the groups can type, some can speak. Perfectly okay. Ransom pretty much holds the target data behind the encryption. Okay, yeah, okay.
It's been able to even keep all like an entire city back and the hospitals back, which causes a lot of damage. And
Yeah, that's pretty problematic.
You know, I'll say what's the big problem?
Mm-hmm.
Outdated technology.
Hmm.
Because there's a whole bunch of places with stuff that isn't really up to date, but they can't update it because it'll just be such a massive project.
The cost factor.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that too.
That is true what he says, because a lot of company that I work for or work with, the system is so old, man. I'm like, is there a little guy in there turning a gear to make this thing go faster? Or, it's really bad some spots, man.
Hmm.
So
Um,
when you, like I said, when you showed us the green screen,
Say it again.
I said when you were showing us the green screen for the first time, that system looks so familiar to me, you know, because I've seen it at a job, you know. I didn't realize what it was at the time, but now I know what it is.
Cool. Yep, all of these are very legit points. Absolutely, absolutely. Corporations don't have the money, don't have the potential, don't have the awareness, don't have the training, don't have the correct individuals. Lots and lots of factors that people are exploiting and taking advantage of. Absolutely. Yeah. So with that, that brings us to the end of today's class. However, I want to emphasize that if you have past due work, please, please, please complete them in the timely fashion. I cannot emphasize it enough, how important it is to be on top of these things because they pile up before you know it, and then you're struggling to find time to complete it. For this week, you have been assigned chapter 4 reading. You have been given 4 problems from the discussion questions area of chapter 4, and the same like every week, 1 question for the quiz. So that's what you will be doing for this week, chapter 4. I hope there was information that was new to you and you enjoyed learning about the information. Any final thoughts, anybody, before we sign off today for today?
Now, I just thought, you know, in terms, in my opinion, it's pretty cool and eye-opening. A lot of stuff that I didn't know that was right in front of my face. So I guess it's definitely an eye opener, and I will definitely be a little bit more careful with what I open and what I don't open. So
Absolutely, absolutely.
I agree.
I mean, there's things that are right in front of you and you don't know. You don't know until you know, until it's too late. Luckily, I haven't been one of those guys that opened anything bad at work yet. So I guess, like I said, awareness is probably going to bring more to my table. So I think I'll be fine.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Cool. Okay, guys, have a good one, and I will stop the recording here, and we will